Hello and welcome to an FM Towns video. This is Mr. Jakes from Basement Brothers. Today I'm going to be trying to play through one of the best exclusive games ever released for this system. But first, just what exactly is an FM Towns? Well, the very first FM Towns looked like this. I used to have one of these, and to most fans of the system, this is what an FM Towns looks like. The first model was released in 1989 and was designed to be Fujitsu's PC-98 killer. While the PC-98 was the most popular PC in Japan by this time, it had a number of technical limitations which had been grandfathered in thanks to the PC-98 series having been around since 1982. The FM Towns, on the other hand, was built on 32-bit architecture rather than 16, offered more colors, smoother scrolling, and the ability to boot from a CD-ROM. Yep, the PC-98 can't boot from CD-ROM, though actually the PC-88 can. The FM Towns placed a huge focus on multimedia software by including a CD-ROM drive on every model, and here's one personal FM Towns story I can tell. I don't really have anything to show on screen for this, so enjoy this gameplay footage. I was at some sort of museum somewhere in Japan around the early 2000s. Don't ask me exactly where it was, but anyway, they had one of those little interactive multimedia kiosks which was basically a CRT monitor in the wall. Nowadays it would probably be a touchscreen, but this one was controlled with an FM Towns controller. Of course, this was the 2000s and FM Towns was already very obsolete by this time, but you know how some museums never get updated. Anyway, a museum informational kiosk is one example of how the multimedia capabilities of the FM Towns could be utilized.
That belongs in a museum!
FM Towns was also used a surprising amount in educational institutions. Around the same time, back in the early 2000s, I was an English teacher in Japan for 3 short years. And one day I happened to notice that one of the junior high schools I worked at had about 10 FM Towns towers like these lined up on one of the top shelves in their library. I'm sure they hadn't been used in years and they were just sitting there waiting to be thrown away. And my final FM Towns story also happened around the same time. One day I was helping to take out the trash at the city hall of the town where I taught English, and I noticed one of the other departments at the city hall had placed an FM Towns tower on the curb. Now, I only thought a little bit about asking if I could have it, or maybe even coming back in the night to take it, but I didn't know if it even worked, and you have to realize this was like 2004, and at the time these were extremely common and worth hardly anything. You could buy a tested and working one online for the equivalent of like $25, and I did end up buying one about 7 years later for not much more than that. But even though I had one of those iconic FM Towns towers, I remember not being very happy with the build quality. They feel more cheap and delicate in your hands than they look in photos, and the CD drives are notoriously unreliable. Mine was mostly working, but the drive didn't sound like it had many good years left in it. So the FM Towns I have now is a much more boring, generic 90s desktop design, similar to the PC-98s of the time. FM Towns had its own GUI-based operating system called Towns OS, but you can see from this faded sticker on mine that FM Towns even had its own versions of Windows you could run on these, going up to Windows 95. I got this machine for a steal because it was untested and totally filthy, but it cleaned up nicely and all the drives are actually still working perfectly. There's even a fully working original hard drive inside. I used to turn up my nose at these generic-looking later models, but the fact of the matter is that if you want a faster CPU to run some of the more system-intensive FM Towns titles, then unfortunately your only option is one of these later models. Sure, the majority of the FM Towns library, including the game we're going to be playing today, will run fine on the very slowest models, including even the FM Towns Marty. But there are still a fair number of games that won't run at full speed, including some of the best games for the system, like the Dojin shooter, Altinix. Oh yeah, the Marty. When I first heard from the video game magazines in the 90s that there was this new console from Fujitsu called the FM Towns Marty, it was the first I'd ever heard of FM Towns, and later on, my very first FM Towns system was a Marty. It's a cool concept, making a console version of their PC series, but it also has a delicate CD-ROM and floppy drive, and unfortunately for YouTubers with upscalers like me, the system downscans all its video output to NTSC resolution. There's no way to get full resolution out of the Marty.
Marty. Such a nice name.
And when I heard about it, I remember wondering just what kind of name is FM Towns. Well, the series was the spiritual successor to Fujitsu's 8-bit series, the Fujitsu Micro 7, or FM7, and the word Towns is a tribute to Nobel Prize-winning physicist Charles Towns, though his name has an E in it. Even today, Fujitsu's PC series are still called FMV, with the V taken from DOS-V. It doesn't have anything to do with full motion video. As for games, FM Towns has a lot of arcade ports, as well as ports from other PCs like the PC-98 and X68000. It has few original or exclusive titles, but one of them is today's game, a shmup called Ryzanbur. And yes, as much as I really want to call it Ryzanbur, the correct pronunciation is Ryzanbur. It isn't Raisin Bar. Ryzanbur was made by Data West, a company surprisingly unrelated to the much more well-known Data East. They never made anything that's well known to the English-speaking world, but Data West also released a couple of sequels to Ryzanbur on the PC Engine. I guess they realized that the FM Towns was never going to be huge and wanted to actually turn a profit on the sequels. The entire series is known for its notoriously high difficulty, and I've never gotten very far in either of the PC Engine games, but today I'm going to take my very best crack at finishing the original, so wish me luck. This is unfortunately starting to become kind of a rare and expensive game nowadays. It comes in a plain jewel case, and inside, of course, there's the disc, and a full color manual. It's the far future, and the light and radio waves created by humans have attracted the attention of the Zol Empire, 30,000 light years away. The Empire doesn't tolerate any intelligent life other than themselves, and attack the Earth to the point of near-human extinction. The humans' last hope is a modified downed enemy aircraft called the RTX-32, which they send on a mission to the Empire's mother planet to shut it down at its very core. This mission has a 1 in 56 million chance of success, it says. I don't like those odds. Well, I guess there's no more stalling. It's time to let the punishment begin. Let's press power and insert the disc. The FM Towns checks for bootable media in the drives, before eventually finding the CD-ROM. The Data West logo screen begins with a spinning CD. Back in 1990, everyone loved being reminded that they were playing a CD-ROM on their expensive new system. The game doesn't have an opening sequence. All we get is this title screen and gameplay demos if you wait long enough. There's not even an options menu or anything like that. You just press run to begin. Kind of weird, by the way, that it says start instead of run. So here we go. You'll notice right away that the aspect ratio of the gameplay is really narrow for a side-scrolling shooter. It's tempting to use the upscaler to stretch it to something closer to 4:3, but unfortunately this is the correct aspect ratio, and you can see that the circles are perfectly round. Those who have played the sequels may also notice that the BGM in this first stage was later remixed for the first stage of Ryzanbur 2. So we start off with this P shooter, and we can press the other trigger button A to do a quick jet dash, which the game calls the overboost. This is a really dangerous move to use since it's so easy to boost yourself into an obstacle, but it can be really helpful if you master it. Not absolutely essential for most of the game, I'd say, but certainly useful if you need to get out of the way or move across the screen quickly. Using it also fills up the heat meter, so you can only use it so much before you need to wait for it to cool down. As for the weapon power-ups, you've got rotating icons that come in 3 different colors. Ice Storm, Fireball, or Lightning Bolt. The direction the icon is facing when you pick it up determines the main direction the weapon will fire, and though straightforward is usually best, there are a lot of parts where it will be preferable to have a different direction. Mercifully, these weapon power-ups don't have multiple power levels, so even if you pick up a second one of the same color, it won't get any more powerful. And I say mercifully because this is a good thing. This is one of those games like R-Type or Gradius, where you'll often die and have to keep restarting from the same checkpoint over and over again. And usually in these games, having to start again with no power-ups is a huge problem. But not in Rise Amber. It always gives you a weapon pretty quickly at each checkpoint, and then you're already fully powered up. But speaking of dying, I did that a lot already in this first stage. For the game over and continue BGMs, instead of CD audio, it uses FM sound. I'm sure to a lot of people the FM sound on the PC-98, X68000, and all these old Japanese PCs sounds a lot like Sega Genesis music, but the FM Towns is actually the only one of these old PCs that has the exact same sound chip as the Genesis. Yeah, that's FM sound on the FM Towns. And one thing I might add is that the output sample rate of the FM sound is much higher on these newer FM Towns models than it is on the earlier ones, and the difference is really noticeable. When you continue, you're taken back to the beginning of the stage instead of the checkpoint, and you do get unlimited continues in this game, so at least I have that on my side. None of the stages in this game are very long, so if you can manage to just be careful on this first stage, you can get to the boss, which will help you practice a couple of important skills for the game. Its weak spot will pop out from the bottom, so for one thing, the overboost can help you get around it before it smashes you. You can use an upward-facing weapon to hit it more easily, but you can also use a charge shot instead by holding down the fire button. In this game, the charge shot is really more of a multi-directional thing rather than a more powerful attack, so you only use it at certain points when you need its multi-directional capabilities. It's not like R-Type or Pulsar, where you're pretty much always charging up a power shot. So let's just finish up with stage 1 and hear the FM sound clear BGM. So now for stage 2. Destroy the guard device Adame. The weak point is double heads. So this is explaining the weak point of the next boss. Stage 2 is an asteroid field, and here we can get the lightning bolt weapon for the first time. Get the backwards firing version to make this part a lot easier. You can also use it to take a shortcut here, where it shows these 2 ships carrying the boss to the end of the stage. If you destroy them, you can go straight to the boss. But then you'll miss out on the part where you have to dodge between these eyeballs. But regardless of which way you get to the boss, it's pretty difficult since you need to stay out of the line of sight of its double heads, which can both suddenly shoot any of 4 directions. Those double heads are also its weak points, so hopefully you can just get enough lucky shots with the lightning bolt. Stage 3. Destroy the guard device Autas. The weak point is a whole body. It's like a combination of the words auto and ass.
It's like the poop's coming out of the ass of the ass. Yeah.
So stage 3. You probably already noticed the parallax scrolling, and throughout the entire game they just use the FM Town's built-in second layer to achieve this. Just like on any system, there are various programming tricks you can use for more layers, but this game just sticks to the one built-in layer. Shame because I can definitely imagine this background looking better with more. There's tons more layers in the sequels, and on the PC Engine of all systems. Stage 3 is the first stage where I really got stuck for a while. This is where my very first play session of the game ended, and I started over from the beginning the next day. The game has 8 stages, and I was on a mission to finish them all. I wasn't about to let the fact that I hadn't finished one of these difficult, slow-moving R-Type style shooters in years stop me. In this stage, you have to avoid these bouncy balls. Though they look like they're just bouncing in a predetermined pattern, the pattern will actually change a bit depending on where you move your ship. So like always in this game, you really have to learn each stage and just stick to your mental script with every playthrough. Go off script at your own peril. The boss in this stage, Otass, is also pretty hard in my opinion. There's really not enough time to see the shots coming. There is one spot here on the screen that is almost a safe spot, but it took me a while to realize that it is one, and even then you still have to be ready to move when the boss comes from the lower right corner. Anyway, I was able to finish this one eventually on my second day playing the game. Destroy the guard device Hammy Scuff. The weak point is a red core. Oh, my man, Hammy Scuff. Stage 4 is an interesting stage that didn't take quite as long to learn. You start out scrolling downward and eventually there's a door in the ground that you have to fly through really quickly before it closes. You can still get to the checkpoint here though if you hold on long enough before crashing. Hammy Scuff's red core moves around in the rear while you try to avoid the fireballs from the green orb on the front. So next, destroy the guard device Caddy Juff. The weak point is a core of inside. Oh man, Hammy Scuff? Caddy Juff? Why do I get the feeling these are terms I don't want to look up on Urban Dictionary? So stage 5 has this white fiery ball chasing you the entire time. Trains of ships come along the top and bottom edges of the screen and you're going to want to break them to stop their chain of fire. The lightning bolt weapon's circular charge shot is really useful in this stage. Not only for these trains, but also these sneaky guys who will circle around and fire on you. Just trust me, they're a lot harder than they look. Then on the boss, Caddy Juff, you can also use the charge shot to do damage even when its weak point isn't exposed. Next, destroy the guard device Add Tom. The weak point is 4 eyes. Hey, that isn't nice. Tom can't help it if he needs glasses. So this is probably the most interesting stage of the game. The whole thing is actually just one screen with a scrolling background, where you have to avoid the pieces of this slide puzzle. Trust me, this is much harder than it looks. You have to memorize the pattern and be ready to move even before the pieces do. To win, you can just survive all the way to the end and Add Tom will die on his own. But if you want to get it done sooner, you can aim for its 4 eyes on this block when you can. This is another one where the lightning bolt and its charge shot are going to be a big help. Destroy the guard device Yodius. Okay, I don't have anything to say for this one. Googling just revealed that Yodius might be a fairly common name in Indonesia. Okay, so stage 7 is the stage that took me far longer to learn than any of the previous ones, which is understandable since it's the second last one. These blocks keep appearing and you can't be touching them when they fully materialize. So generally, you have to stay ahead of the action near the front of the screen and know what's coming. There are a number of tight spots which are hard to pull off correctly, even once you've learned the stage. Probably the most difficult one of all is luckily right at the checkpoint, so even though I usually die here, I can just start again with the most difficult enemies already gone. Oh yeah, I should probably mention eventually that the stage music in this game is all CD audio, but it sounds very synthetic, like something from one of Telenet's CD soundtracks. It was probably all produced on a Roland MIDI module. In this stage though, I gotta have more cowbell. And I just realized I forgot to use that line in my Langrisser video, but we can still make it right, can't we? Hey, look at me, I'm playing Langrisser 1 for the Sega Mega Drive. Hey, listen to that music. I've gotta have more cowbell. If you can manage to get to Yodius, he's really easy if you know the trick. His first phase just has these 2 shooters on the top and bottom with very easy to avoid shots. Then he'll move on to his next phase, but between each phase you'll get a chance to finish him off King Hippo style. Line up your ship's nose so that you can aim a shot right between this narrow opening. And if you can do it successfully, Yodius dies in 1 shot. Screw it up though and you're probably dead.
I'll give you an accident on purpose!
So finally, destroy the master device Kalmakan. The weak point is a moving core. Save all living things. So this is it, the final stage. When I first saw this one, I thought it was hardcore as hell. I've probably said it too many times now, but this is much harder than it looks. Just like all the other stages, you just have to learn it. But this one took the longest. I know games like this are really meant to be played all in one sitting, and you just start over from the beginning the next time you turn it on, but just saying, it would have been kinda nice to have a save feature. I did end up leaving the FM Towns turned on for one night, since I didn't want to start from stage 1 again the next day. Don't worry, I took the CD out when I did this in order to help preserve the fragile FM Towns CD drive. The last stage has no sound effects for some reason. I wondered if this was just a bug that occurs with my particular FM Towns system or something, but all videos I can find of the last stage online also show it with no sound effects, so I guess that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe they thought that just having the music for the final stage would make it feel more dramatic. All the enemies on this stage take a ton of hits, so your trigger finger is really going to get a workout unless you use a turbo controller. I made do with the FM Towns boomerang pad, cause luckily I've been a gamer since the 80s and still have a very fast thumb. For now at least. I don't know if I'll still be able to do this at 60. The Towns boomerang pad has got to be my favorite controller for these old Japanese PCs, by the way. During my early days of collecting, this was always my go-to controller for the PC-98 and X68000 as well. Avoid these flat gray FM Towns controllers like the plague, though. The D-pad is awful. If you can manage to get to the checkpoint in this one, you've still got the entire second half to learn, and both halves still have lots of tight spots, which are easy to screw up no matter how well you learn it. Eventually I became able to get to the final boss every now and then, and gradually figured it out. This is maybe the only spot in the game where you really need to use the overboost. This boss seemed absolutely hardcore to me at first, but once I got it, I was amazed by how easily I was able to survive indefinitely. Which is good because if you don't use a turbo controller, you're going to need a lot of passes at its weak point before you can take it down. So it was only a matter of time before I prevailed, and after leaving the system on all night, ironically I was able to start over from the beginning and beat the game a second time the same day. It's amazing how much easier the game is once you've learned the stages. This game has been pretty bare bones when it comes to presentation so far, and the ending is no exception. We just get this shot of the RTX-32 flying and then returning to Earth. I guess that's supposed to be Europe and the top of Africa. So then all that's left is the credits. I wish I could tell you about all the famous games these people went on to make, but unfortunately, other than maybe the music guy, it seems all of them are only credited on other Data West games. If you want to know more about Data West though, I highly recommend FTB's exhaustive video all about them. There are no secret codes for the game that I'm aware of, but I actually stumbled upon a stage skip trick. At the end of stage 1, if you take out the disc before it loads stage 2, instead of just getting stuck until you reinsert the disc like you'd expect, it starts stage 1 again from the beginning. Replaying stage 1 over and over again is one easy way you could get a high score and accumulate 1-ups. But anyway, if you reinsert the disc before finishing stage 1 for the second time, instead of loading up stage 2, the game will skip to stage 3. And again, there are no ports of Rise Amber 1, but there were 2 sequels on the PC Engine, which I've also played a bit. Apparently these are harder than the original, maybe even a lot harder. Rise Amber 1 is a great early 90s shmup only available for the FM Towns. Though I'm sure a lot of people will look at the graphics and say it isn't that impressive compared to other greats of the 16-bit era. You have to remember though that this was only 1990. 91, 92, and 93 would bring rapid innovation and quickly change our graphical expectations for these side-scrolling shmups. But if there's one thing that really impressed me about Rise Amber 1, it would have to be how well thought out the stages are. There were so many moments that had me thinking, wow, that's really clever. You can tell they really thought about the player experience and what they expected the player to do in order to get through each of these stages and bosses. Stages like 7 at first look like a mess of blocks and enemies just to get in your way, but once you learn it, it becomes a well-orchestrated mess with a clear path forward. Perhaps Rise Amber isn't for everyone, but if you're a fan of these hardcore shmups, then you definitely ought to check it out, rather than just skipping to the sequel on the PC Engine. Rise Amber 1 is not to be missed. Thanks for watching my FM Towns video. This video was requested by my longtime patron, James Clarendon. Huge props to him and all the other patrons for making this possible. And thank you for watching as always. Hope to see you all back in paradise soon.